In this video, we'll be building the sort of foundational elements. So we're going to create a client dashboard that has the capabilities to track tasks, meetings, and notes. Now, this foundational setup is also included in my premium template Notion for agencies, which, as well as including the stuff I'm going to show you today, also has a super robust company wiki. It has a client portal. We have a built-in marketing initiatives dashboard, a CRM, as well as a whole bunch of other things. So if you want a complete, comprehensive agency system set up for you in Notion that you can download just with a click of a button, check out the link in the description below. For this video, I'm going to be giving a special discount for anyone who watches this. So you can use agency 2024 at checkout to get 50% off the template. That being said, if you want to get into the nitty gritty and get your hands dirty, that's what this video is all about. So let's jump straight into it. So we're going to start building this agency system inside my own Notion. And the first rule I have for you here is whenever you're starting to create new builds inside of Notion, if you're using Notion alongside your team, is to create a separate team space called sandpit. And you can update the team space settings to make sure that only yourself and maybe one other person has access to this team space. And so what this is going to allow you to do is basically create new builds that might not be ready and fully fledged to sort of launch to the rest of the team. And so you can build them in the sandpit area without worrying that other people are going to start seeing it and be confused by it or start messing around with it before you've had time to fully execute on it. So the first thing we're going to do is create the databases that are required for this. Now I can do this by scratch just by coming to this add a page. I could do a blank page. And then within here, I might add a database, hit new database, and start adding all of that stuff in. But we can skip a few steps just by using Notion's built-in templates that they have for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to this button here and add a page. And instead of hitting blank page, I'm actually going to choose from one of the suggested templates, the projects and tasks. So if I just do this and I'm going to say add anyway, this is just basically a warning message because I've already got some task database inside of this team space. That's fine. So we're going to add anyway. And now Notion sets up a projects and task database for us. They are already related together. So the projects, if I go into one of these projects, you'll notice it has a relation to the task database. So that's already linked for us. And also the other thing that has been established is this task database has been recognized as a task database for our home. And so if we go inside of our home page here, if we was to add any new tasks from here, it's going to be added to that new task database here. And so this is all fully integrated for us already by Notion, which is great. So we sort of can skip a few steps. So we've got our projects and we've got our tasks. The next thing we need is a meetings database and a docs database. So again, I'm just going to use what Notion already has for us. I can create their docs database from the template they've given us. And then also I can create a meetings database from the meetings template they've given us. So now we've got each of these databases set up. The next thing I'm going to do is basically go through them one by one and refine them. And this comes to my first point, which is, or my second rule, which is that we want to keep database properties to a minimum and keep them as simple as possible. So taking a look at the task database we have set up, I'm just going to ask myself the question, do I need this property, or what is this property going to be used for, and is it required? And a quick way to do this is if I just open up one of the pages, I can open this page in full. There may be some hidden properties here, so I'm just going to hit this one more property so I make sure I'm seeing everything. And now I can go through the properties nice and quickly and see at a glance what's here and what might not be required. So first of all, I'm going to delete which are the things I don't think I need. So first of all, we have this summary AI. So Notion has Notion AI built into it if you're on one of their more premium plans. And you can also have these AI summaries as database properties. At the moment, I haven't seen much use case for it yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the property and delete the property for now. I can also be reassured that if I ever wanted to come and bring back that property that I've deleted, I can come back to the source database, come to these three dots here, go to properties, And then you'll see there's a deleted properties section here. So I can always bring back any of these properties I'm deleting, so not to worry about deleting any of these properties. Okay, so jumping back in. The next thing I see is we have this parent task relation, and this is actually a relation back to the task database, and it's what runs this parent task. And then you'll see below here we've got these subtasks. So basically, if we want subtasks within our task database, because we already have a projects database that we're going to be using, I only ever like to have there be two levels of hierarchy. So the projects is the bigger scope. And then the tasks is the smaller scope, and projects are grouping tasks together. So I don't like to go down to a third level, which would be then having subtasks within a parent task. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So again, I'm just going to click the property, hit delete, and then you'll notice it's asking delete parent property for everyone on task. I'm going to hit delete, and then you'll also notice that the subtask relation, because it was a relation to each other, that's also been removed as well. We have some priority levels, high, low, and medium. That's pretty standard. Again, I haven't got a use case for it now, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove it, and I can always bring it back later. And then finally, we have this tags property. Again, we haven't quite yet got a use case for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove that for now. So now I've deleted all the properties I don't need. The next thing I'm going to do is look at the existing properties and see if there's any edits I want to make to them. So first thing I see is we have this person property that's working as an assignee function. And so you can see I can have myself assigned, I could assign John, and so we can divvy out who's doing what task. Now, best practice has taught me when it comes to assigning responsibilities and having people accountable, everyone should only be accountable for one thing. So only one person for one task, one project, one objective. And so what I'm actually going to do here is update this assignee property. I'm going to come to edit property, and I'm actually going to add a limit. So I'm going to say that only one person is the limit for this property, and so only one person can be assigned as the assignee. So you'll see if I add John now, it switches him out for me. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is actually add a second assignee property. So I can do this nice and quickly by coming to the assignee property here and hitting duplicate. And then what I'm going to do here is update this so there is no limit for this particular assignee property. And then I'm just going to adjust the names here. So I'm going to rename this to say lead. And then I'm going to rename this to say supporting. And so now what we've done inside of our tasks, we can always know that John is ultimately accountable for getting this task done. But if we wanted to add any additional assignees, we can add them as supporting. And so you can have multiple people working on a task, but ultimately it would be John who's responsible for it. The second thing I'm going to do is look at the statuses. So at the moment we have not started, in progress, done, and archived. That is absolutely fine for me. The main thing I wanted to look for was if there was an archived option, because often what will happen is a task will be created and then we'll decide that we actually don't want to go ahead and do the task. And so it's nice to have the option to put it as archived, as in it hasn't actually been completed, but we're no longer thinking about doing it. And so now after adjusting those assignee properties, I think these look great for me. So now we can go ahead and build out the views for the task database. So I'm going to come back to the sidebar here and come to tasks. And so my third rule for you is when you're building out your views for your major databases, you might want to think about having some standardized views that all of your databases share. And so what this does is it means anyone that's moving throughout Notion and using the different databases, they're familiar with the views and what they do, and there's not too much friction going between the different databases. For me, there's 4 different views that I like to have in each of my databases. That's a view that is an all view, so it shows you everything unfiltered. Then I like to have a view by project or by something that's grouping it, whatever the higher up in the hierarchy the thing is. Then I like to have a me view, which I'll explain in a second. And then finally, I like to have a completed/archived view. So I'm just going to build those views out now and show you how I do that. So first of all, we already have a by project view, which is great. The only thing I'm going to add is a status filter that basically says the status is not complete. So we're going to hit is not complete. I'm also going to add this as an advanced filter, and then I'm going to remove these other filters that have been set up. Now, Notion sets these filters up because they offer teams the ability to sort of go to a database and then filter whatever they like. And you'll notice that I have, when I created my first filter, there's this save for everyone message that appears here. And so the idea is that multiple people can working in the same database, and then I might decide I want to just see things for this project. And as long as I don't hit the save for everyone, that filter is just shown for me. And so you can sort of filter based on what you want to see. Personally, I find it better for teams to set up views very intentionally and then to not mess with the filters in any way. And so you get used to what the views do and how they look. And so you're not required to create filters. I found when teams go ahead and start adding filters themselves, they either lose sight of what the original view was for, or they might hit save for everyone and then that adjusts the filter for everyone, and then the sort of original view has been messed up. So we're going to just delete these filters that have already been set up, and then just have this one filter set up in an advanced filter, so it's sort of tucked away, and we're just going to hit save for everyone. So now this has been set up for us. So we have our by project view, which is great. We also already have an all tasks view, which has been set up, which is great. And you can see there's no filters for this, which is just how we want it. Again, we might want to adjust where the properties sit. I sort of like to have my properties like so. And then I also like to have the actual layout show wrap all columns. And so this basically means that if there's any columns where the information hangs low, it sort of wraps it for you. So we have our all tasks there. I might also just rename this and have this give itself an icon just for the aesthetic. And then we're going to create that me view. So what I can actually do is just hit this property here and duplicate it. And now I can rename this to me. I'm going to change the icon to a user. So it's just this single user here. And then we're going to hit this filter icon. I'm going to choose lead, contains, and then we've got this me option. And so basically what this filter does is if I have been tagged as the lead, it will show me my tasks here. Now, if someone else was signed in, if John was signed into Notion and he was looking at this exact same page, even at the same time as me on his Notion account, he would see all of John's tasks. He would see his own tasks here. And so that me filter is relative to whoever is looking at Notion. And so this is a really nice filter to set up. So we can add the lead is me. Because we've got this supporting property as well, we might also turn this into an advanced filter and say lead contains me. And actually I'm going to wrap this into a group. Lead contains me, or supporting contains me. And then also what I'm going to add is, again, that status is not complete or archived. So we've got that me property set up. And then finally come back to that all tasks view. I'm going to duplicate. And then this one is going to be called completed/archived. I'm going to add an archive icon. And then I'm going to filter and say status is done or archived. So this is actually showing me things that has been completed or archived. And so these are the 4 views that we now have set up. So we've got an all task view that has no filters. So if you've ever lost the task, or if you're just looking to look through everything, you could come here, search, and you know you're not being filtered away by everything. We're seeing things by project that haven't been completed yet, so grouped by project, which is great. We can see things that have been assigned to me if I want to jump into that. And then also we can see things that have been completed or archived. So we've done the properties, we've set up some views. The next thing we might want to think about is, does this database require any database templates? Generally for tasks, this might be something that you think about and build out over time. So to create a database template, we come to this new button here and go to the right of it and drop down to this menu. And you can actually see that the Notion has given us a task template to begin with. So to edit it, I've gone to these 3 dots here and I can hit edit. And you can see I've just got a basic template with an icon and a description. And so this has been set to default. And basically that means that if I create a task anywhere in Notion inside this database, it's going to apply that template by default. So generally task templates, as I said, will be things that you sort of organically come up over time. And so I would actually advise to delete this template as it's not really doing anything for us. It's sort of just been put in there. But something you might want to start from the very beginning is creating a delegated tasks template. And so I'll show you how to do this. We're going to hit new template and we're going to give it the title delegated task. And I'm just going to put this in some brackets to show that this is sort of just a placeholder name. We can give it an icon. So I'm just going to use a sort of arrow to show that this is sort of being assigned to someone else. And then we can build out inside this template a bit of an instruction manual for people that want to create a delegated task. So for example, we might create a call out and say to create a delegated task, fill out the information below. And we're going to change this to an info icon. And so inside here, we might want to give some people some guides of how to create a delegated task for someone else so that whoever's receiving that task has all the information they need to complete the task. So it might be additional details that we want. It might be what would the ideal outcome look like. And then it might also be some FAQs. And so someone can create a new task, a delegated task, and then fill out all this information in the page body for someone else. And then they hopefully will have sort of all the information they need to get started on this task. So that's just one template I like to create from the outset. And so now if someone wanted to create a delegated task, they might come into here and they might say, Nancy to send email, and then they can open up the page, create this delegated task, and then inside of here, we've got a bit of a guide for them to help them create this delegated task inside of here. So we've done the properties, we've adjusted the views, and we've created a database template. The last thing to do would be to add instructions to this database page. And so what we can do is add a description to this database, and this is where I'd put all of the instructions in. Now this will be based on how you're using the database and how your team is going to be using it. So it might just be a case of this is our general task manager, all tasks go in here, for example. Of course, you might want to come up with a bit more detail about what the database is being used for, but you can add those as just top level instructions in the description here. If you want to link out to a Loom video that you've created that gives an overview of the database, that's great as well. The only thing I'd think about is you want to keep your instructions as lightweight as possible, just so in the future, if you update this database, it's not a big push to then update the instructions for it. Now, the final thing I want to touch on before I move on to the other databases is, as you'll notice, even in my own personal business workspace, some Notion experts like to group all of their databases within a databases page. The reason for this is it's just nice to get a bird's eye view of all the databases that are being used. It also means you can sort of divvy out access levels to databases a little bit easier. And also there's a bit of a theory that it means people are less likely to delete databases if they're in a separate page. Recently I've moved away from putting databases in dedicated databases page, and also just putting it as a top level database in the sidebar here. And I'll show you later in this video how to create access levels so that deleting the entire database becomes less of an issue. And then the other nice thing that you get from having databases as databases in the sidebar is we can use this quick add function. And so the team, if they want to capture a task, all they have to do is come to the task here, hit add, and now there's a new task and it's been added to that task database instantaneously. So I thought I'd just share that with you, and this is the strategy we're using for this foundational build, so something just to make you aware of. Right, so let's go to the meetings database and follow the exact same steps. So I'm going to open up one of the pages so I can get a nice overview of the properties in here. The first thing I'm going to ask myself is, are all of these properties needed? And if they're not, let's go ahead and delete them. So straight away, I'm seeing created by, created time, last edited time. Personally, I don't need this for my meetings database. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these database properties. We also have a type property, and this is, as you can see, sort of showing us what type of meeting this is. So for now, that looks good for me. The next thing I'm going to look at is if there's anything I want to edit to these current properties. So the only thing that's signaling to me is the attendees property. So this again is a person property. The only thing to be aware of is that inside Notion, you can only tag someone with this person property if they've been invited into the workspace either as a member or a guest. So this basically requires someone to have a Notion workspace and for them to have sort of interacted with your workspace in some way. And so this is fine for internal teams. Everyone should be invited into Notion anyway, so you can track the fact that they're attendees. But if you have anyone external, for example, someone like a contractor or even a client, they might not be inside your Notion workspace. And so you might not be able to log the fact that they have been in attendance to this meeting. So if you would like to prevent that, or you want to log that, there's a couple things you can do. The nice and easy thing might be just to add a text property, and you could call this external attendees. And now you can just add in here, for example, that Elena George was in attendance to this meeting. The other thing you can also do is create a separate database that might be called external contacts, and then create a relation to that. And then that basically means that you then have a bit more of a drop-down menu with all of your current or external contacts. And so you can reuse them again and again and again. For now, we're just going to keep it simple, and attendees is good for me to move forward with. And so the next and final thing is there any other properties that I'd like to see here that would help me? And for me, there's only one thing missing, and that is a URL. I'm going to add a URL in here, and I'm actually going to rename this to meeting recording. And so if I'm using any third-party recording apps, or if I'm recording straight from Zoom or from Google Meets, I can then come into Notion, and once I've made my meeting agenda and logged my meeting notes, I can also attach a meeting recording here. And this becomes really powerful in Notion because it means you have a library of all of your meetings. And so if anyone's missed a meeting, they can just come into Notion, find the meeting, and then also link to the meeting recording and find all that information in there as well. The other property that I forgot to add is a relation to that projects database that we've had set up. And this will, you understand why I'm doing this later in the video, but we'll add a property. We're going to use the relation. We're going to find that projects database and make sure it's the one inside of our sandpit team space. And then do we want to show it on projects? For now, that's fine not to be shown on projects. And I'm going to add the relation in here. And then I'm also just going to give it that same icon just for the sake of consistency. And so now we have all the properties we need. So again, for the views, I'm going to use that strategy of using the same 4 views for the databases. So we can see we've already got an all view here. I'm just going to rename this to all meetings for the sake of consistency. And I'm going to add an icon in here. And then the next thing we will want is a mine view. So I'm going to duplicate this view, and you can see how you can start to really speed up the process here just by duplicating from the views that are already existing. Let's rename this to me. We want a view grouping by project, which we just created the relation for. So again, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to come to group by project, and that's perfect there. Now, the meetings database currently doesn't have a status that is not started, in progress, complete, archive. And so you might think that we don't need a sort of archived section. But I'm actually going to show you a final property that you might want to add to your meetings in your docs database. And basically means that it maintains and keeps your databases clean for anything that you're not needing. So I'm going to open up the properties or the page again. I'm going to add a property, and this time I'm going to add a rollup. And so essentially in Notion, if you haven't used a rollup before, a rollup is basically if you have a relation in that database, you can then pull information from that database relation and see it as a rollup in this database. So for example, I might say this is the project status. And I can just leave that like so. And then inside here, I'm going to select the existing relation, which is that project's relation. And then the property I'm pulling it in is the status of the project. And then I just want to show the original, then that's perfect. And then I'm also just going to always hide this property because I don't need to see it. It's just for the sake of filtering things out. And so now what I can do is, first of all, I can duplicate from the all meetings, and I'm going to create that archived view. So I'm going to hit archived, and I'm going to filter project status, and I'm going to say is, and I'm going to say complete. And this is what is showing me that any of the statuses is either done or cancelled. And I'm going to save that for everyone. So that's for my archived view, and I'm going to hide this from the table. And then now for the existing ones I have for the by project and the me view, I'm actually going to adjust the filters. So now I'm going to add the project status is not complete for this project view, by project view. And then for the me view, I'm going to add this as an advanced filter. And so it says attendees contains me, and the project status none is done or cancelled. And so basically what this means is that inside of these two views, it's only going to show you meetings that are related to projects that are currently active or not yet complete. And so it's actually going to remove any of the meetings that are associated with projects that have been completed. And so it's only keeping the most relevant things at the surface. And then again, if you always want to come back and look at any of this information, you can come to the archive view or the all meetings view to find this information. I've also got some outstanding views. So this was showing me by the meeting type. I don't really need that, so I'm going to remove that. I've got list by type. Again, I'm not really in need of that at the moment, so I'm going to remove that. But the calendar view would be quite useful, I think, for my team, just to get a visual representation of the different meetings that are happening. So that's a fifth view that I'm going to add into this database views, and I'm going to drag it and put it alongside the me view here. And I'm not going to add any filters to this because I want to be able to see the history of the meetings that have happened and the meetings that are going to happen. So that's an additional view I'm going to add in here. Now, the next thing we want to do is add a database template if it's required. And for meetings, that's definitely required. It's really useful to have a meeting template. So again, I'm going to come to this arrow here. And you'll notice, again, Notion has given me some meeting templates to begin with. So if we come to edit, let's take a look at what they've got. They've got a new weekly meeting, and you can see they've got pre-read, agenda items, and action items. And so I'm actually going to do, I'm going to edit this template and make this our standard meeting template. So I'm just going to open this up for the sake of editing it. We're going to just slightly change the icon so it's black instead of grey. And then what I want to do is basically edit what they've got in here. So the pre-read, I'm going to change this to, I'm actually going to drag this down. I'm going to change this to meeting notes. Agenda items, that's great. I'm going to remove these here. And I'm just going to add a bullet point here. And then action items is great. And we're going to leave that to do feature there. But what I'm also going to add is a toggle, and I'm actually going to link a view of our task database inside of this template. So I'm going to do / toggle. I'm going to say add to task database. And then I'm going to toggle down. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to do / linked. And then I'm going to choose the linked view of database. And so now from within here, I'm going to bring in that task database, again, making sure it's coming from the sandpit team space. And then at the moment, I'm just going to use the all tasks view for now. And I'm just going to come up here to these three dots. I'm going to make sure that this page is full width, just so we have a bit more screen space. And so at the moment, you could just have an all tasks view of your task database. And so basically what this means is you can capture agenda, you can write down your meetings during the meeting, you can capture action items nice and quickly using that to do feature. And then if you like, you can actually bring the tasks into the task database here and capture them into the task database from this page. Now, an additional add you might want to do is basically to make this database view clear, and it's only going to add or show the tasks that you add for this particular meeting. So obviously, if you have an all tasks view, once you start to use it and stress test this database, you will have a lot of entries in there for your tasks. So if you open up this add to task database view, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming to see all that information. So to do this, to sort of restrict it just to show the task for this meeting, I'm going to add a property to the task database just by opening up the page. I'm going to add a new property, and if you haven't already guessed it, it's going to be a relation property to the meetings database itself. So I'm just going to say related meetings. I'm going to add relation. I don't need to show it on my meetings, so that's fine. I'm going to add the relation. I'm just going to change the icon as well. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to show this as a minimal property inside of the meetings database. And what that basically does is it just means it clears it away from the properties at the very top of the task database and keeps things nice and simple. So I'm going to close this out, and now I've got that relation property. What I can do is add a filter, and in this filter I'm going to say related meetings contains, and then I'm going to use what's called a self-referential filter. And so essentially, out of the list of relating meetings, I'm actually going to click the new weekly template meeting I'm currently in. So if I hit new weekly, it's going to add that in here, and I'm going to save that for everyone. And so now, and I'm just going to hide this property here. And so now basically what this means is it's only going to, when I create a new meeting, it's going to add the tasks related to the meeting automatically. Which sounds quite complicated. Let me show you exactly what I mean here. The other thing I wanted to do is just, this is currently set to say that the event time is today, but now, so the date and time is duplicated. I'm just going to change this to today. And so basically that means whenever you create the meeting, it's automatically going to be given today's date, and then you can move it along. So going back to the meetings, let's show you how this works. So if I create a new meeting here, and I'm just going to open up the page and use the new weekly template that we've just created. Obviously, I would rename this to whatever the meeting's about, but if I open up this up as a full page, let's say I've got task 1, task 2, and task 3. Then I've decided I actually want to add them to our general task manager. What I can actually do is just drag this until I see this blue square appear, and we're going to highlight all of those tasks. Then I'm going to come to these dots here, which is allowing me to drag these blocks. Drag these blocks until I see that blue line highlight just below the property names. And then I'm just going to let go. And you'll notice that's been added to this view of the task database. And I'm not seeing all of the tasks in the task database. And so if I was to open up one of these tasks, what you'll notice is it's actually been automatically related to this new weekly page that we've set up. So if this was daily stand-up that was at today, then you'll see that this task is related to that daily stand-up using a self-referential filter. So that's a nice standard meeting template to have. And I'm actually going to set this as the default, and I'm going to rename this to standard meeting. Again, put it inside brackets so people know that's a placeholder name. And then the other thing I might want to do is think about, like we can see Notion has done, is if there's any other meetings that we have on a recurring basis that we might want to create templates around. And so I'm just going to delete what they've got set up. And then I'm going to duplicate our current standard meeting by coming up to these 3 dots here and hitting duplicate. And so what that's going to do is add in that action items database for us automatically. And so it might be that we have a team meeting every Friday. So I'm going to add team meeting here. And then inside the agenda items, I might want to pre-populate this team meeting template with some agenda items that we go through every Friday. So it might be that we review our KPIs, we ask if there's any issues that anyone wants to announce, if there's any opportunities that we've been thinking about, wins, challenges, all that kind of thing. We can add these as agenda items that are all going to automatically appear inside this meeting template. The other thing we can do is change the icon, just give it a bit of a distinction. We can change the type property, which has already been done here, to a team weekly. And then also, if it's the same people attending this meeting, we can add them as attendees automatically. And then finally, what we can also do is using Notion's recurring database feature, we can have this meeting be created for us at the start of the day every single week. So to do this, I'm going to hit these three dots here. I'm going to choose repeat. I'm going to make this weekly. Our weekly is on a Friday, so I'm going to have it appear every Friday. And I'm going to have it appear at 12 a.m. So when everyone's asleep, this is going to be generated. And let's have this start this Friday. And I'm going to save that. And then you'll see we have this blue sort of repeat symbol appear here. And so basically what that means is every Friday, this team meeting is going to be created for us. It's going to be given that day's date. We're going to have the agenda items already in there. All of the attendees are already going to be tagged. And so all you have to do is on maybe the Friday morning, you can come in here, maybe adjust the agenda items, or it might just be that you want to go through them each time and you're ready to go to use this meeting template. So the meetings is looking good for me now. Again, I might want to add some instructions to the top of this page as a final step, but now we're ready to move on to docs. So again, I'm going to open up one of the pages so I can see all of the database properties at a glance. Is there anything I want to delete? I actually like all the properties that are already here. So for the docs, I like to have created by, last edited by, and then created and last edited time, because docs generally are things that you're creating over time, and so it's nice to see when revisions have been made and who by. The only adjustment I'm going to make here is for this created by, this is currently using the actual created by type property. And so I'm going to remove this because it looks like it's not going to let me delete it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a property and I'm going to make it a person property instead. And so I'm just going to call this author. So we have someone who's set to the author. And then again, what I'm going to do is first of all, make this a limit. So it's a one person limit. So there's always someone who's accountable for this thing that's being made. And then also I'm going to set the default to created by. And so we can see that when this is always going to be by default, the person who created it is set to author. But if you wanted to actually change this and say that it's John that is actually the author, I'm just creating it for him. Then you can mark that there. And then the other thing is I'm going to duplicate this property and I'm going to just add supporting. And as you might have guessed, we're going to make this no limit. And then we don't want it to be a default, so no default. And so now again, we have that nice relationship between who is ultimately responsible for this, and then if there are people supporting, who's supporting on it. Now I have a rule number 4 for you, and that is to use Notion's features to link to third-party apps or tools so that you don't do any double work inside of Notion. And so for this particular context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a property, and I'm actually going to come and find Notion's Google Drive file. So our company uses Google Drive, and so we can use this and you can create an integration with Google Drive. So I'm just going to call this Google Drive. Yeah, that looks good to me actually. And I'm just going to change the icon here. And then inside of here, you'll want to connect this to your Google Drive account. And so now what this basically means is that if you want to link to something that lives inside of Google Drive, you can just come in here and use it like a search box and quickly tag it like so. So what this does basically is it means that if people are creating content inside of Google Drive, like Google Sheets or presentations, things like that, but you want to give it visibility inside of the context of Notion, what you can do is create a Notion Docs database page that almost works like a placeholder, and then you can link it to that that file that lives outside of Notion. And so what this basically means is that it avoids double work because it's not like you're trying to then replicate that inside of Notion, but it means you have the advantage of having it live inside of Notion where everyone gets nice visibility of that. For our views, I'm going to go with my standard for all mine by project and archived, and I'm going to use that same roll-up trick that I used for the meetings for the docs. So I'm going to pause the video and go through that nice and quickly for you now. So now we have all those docs views set up, and again I'm using this clever roll-up property that basically is finding out if the related project status what it is, and then I'm using that in my filters for the project and the MUI and the archive views to make sure that the project status isn't complete or for the archive view to show that the project status is complete. So finally, we can take a look at the projects database. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually rename what this database is called. So at the moment, it's just called client projects. At the moment, it's just called projects. We're now going to rename this to client projects to be a bit more specific. So this is all of our client projects that we're working on with our clients. And so again, we're going to open up the page and take a look at the database properties. First of all, I'm going to delete again that summary AI. Don't need that. Priority for me, client work, they're always the same priority level, so we can remove that. We have this blocked by and is blocking properties. Again, these are relating back to the projects database itself, and these are being used for dependencies. So if you have particular projects that one needs to happen before the other can start, you can use this dependencies feature. Again, this is client work. Client work doesn't tend to be ordered in that way. You're just working with however many clients you have at once. So we're going to remove one of them, and that will remove both of them. We're again going to adjust the person or the owner property here. And so basically we want this to be a one-person limit, and I'm going to rename this to lead. And then I'm going to duplicate again, and I'm going to have supporting, and this is going to be no limit. We can also see that we have the tasks at the bottom, but we're going to create a dedicated linked view of the tasks in a projects database template. So at the moment, I'm just going to show these as minimal, so they take up less visual space. And then finally, we want to take a look at the status properties, which I find people often overlook when they're actually building out their Notion builds. And so this status property becomes really important for what are the actual stages of your client projects. And generally, you might want to do a bit of a process mapping here to find out what the different stages are when you service a client, and then put them inside of Notion so you can use a Kanban board view for tracking your projects. So for me, I'm just going to put the status in that we actually use for our company. So I'm going to change the backlog to discovery. I'm going to change the planning to onboarding. I'm going to change the in progress to delivery. I'm going to remove the paused status. I'm going to change the done to follow up or offboarding. And then I'm going to change this to complete. And then I'm going to add a final one that is archived. And so now these statuses more closely align with what our actual stages of a client project look like. You'll also notice Notion gives us this completion progress bar. And so just to show you what this is again a roll up. And basically what it's doing here is based on our tasks relation, it's seeing what the status is of those tasks, and then it's calculating the percent per group. So it's calculating by percent how many are complete. And so we can see the completion is 50%. We don't have to touch this. I really like the progress bar. It's nice to sort of see that visually, but just to show you how that works. So now we can take a look at the views. Now this is where I'm going to actually break one of my rules, because I think for the projects databases or clients projects database, how we see things is a little different. So first of all, we have this timeline view, which I think is great. And I'm just going to simplify this slightly. So I'm just going to change the grouping just to say that it's not grouped by anything. And then we can see the stage, we can see who the lead is, we can see the currently completion. And so that's great for me just to get a bird's eye view of what the projects are that we have on the go. And just to show you, this timeline view is being used by that dates property that we have, and it's just a date span that has been created. So we have that timeline view. The other thing we might want to do is add a filter to say that the status is not completed or archived. And so that will just basically remove any of those from the timeline. And then we can, again, remove the other existing filters we have here, because we just want people to use the views as we've set them up. The other view I like to have is a Kanban board style view with those statuses that we set up. So I'm just going to duplicate from the all view. I'm going to change the layout to board, and it is grouping by the status, which is great. Now at the moment it's hiding the empty groups. I'm just going to toggle that off. I'm also going to change the sort by manual, and just make sure that this is in the correct order. So discovery, onboarding, delivery, offboarding, completed, and archived, which is perfect. And then we're also just going to hide the archived and completed because we don't need to see them all the time. And then I'm going to change this to colored columns just because it's nice to see it like that. And then also I'm going to come back to layout, I believe, and we're going to make the card size large just so it fills the space of the template itself or the view itself. We can change this to by status, changing the icon again just for visual consistency. For the filters themselves, we can leave them as is. I think they look great because once we move something from offboarding to completed, it just goes into this hidden view here, so we don't need to sort of filter out by completed. The other thing we can also do here is change what properties are shown. So I'm going to come to these three dots here, come to properties. I can add in the date. I can add in that completion or that progress bar. And then I might also want to add in the lead. And so we can see that again, just as a bird's eye view. And now we can see what is happening for our projects. And then the final view I like to show is just, again, one of those completed views. So I'm going to come here, change this all view by changing the filters, and I'm going to say the status is completed or archived. Save for everyone, remove the other filters, and now we have a archived view. And I'm just going to change this to completed/archived. And those are the views I like to have set up. So I'm actually going to remove that active view. And so now we have three very simple views by status, the timeline, and then completed and archived. As you can see for the projects, it's a bit more of a personal preference when it comes to how you like to visually view this data. But generally I like the board view, the timeline, and then just a completed archived view. So now the next step is to look at that database template, and the projects database template is an important one. And as you can see, Notion's given us one and it's set it to default, which is great. So what I'm going to do is just come in here and edit it slightly. We're going to change the icon to keep it consistent with what we've got set up so far. And then let's open this up. I'm going to call this client project again in those parentheses, so everyone knows they can rename this. And then what you can see is Notion's already done this for us. It's set up this section here, which is a view of our task database. And again, it's using that self-referential filter to basically only show the tasks that have been related to this project itself. So this is pretty much good to go. We've got about this project section, which I quite like. I'm just going to rename the title of this to tasks to simplify it. I'm going to open up this as a full width page just to give a bit more space. And then I'm also going to add in the docs and the meetings. So we're going to do /3 to get a heading of 3. And let's start with the meetings. I've just noticed that the tasks title is actually a heading 2. So I'm just going to adjust that. And then below here, we're going to do /linked view of the database. We're going to find the meetings database. Let's start with the existing all meetings view and then adjust it. So we're going to change the filter to say that the project, and open this up, is client project, and then save for everyone. And so now we have an all meetings view in here that is just showing us things that are related to this project. And of course I can go through and adjust these views as I like them. And then let's also get the docs in here. So again, /2 docs /linked, get the linked database. Let's go for the docs, use the all docs existing view, adjust the filtering to say that the project is this template, save for everyone, and now that's just going to show us docs for this particular project. And then I'm just going to do a // just to get a bit of a divider at the end, just to show that that's the end of the page. Again, we can go through and adjust these views to how we like them. I would use the views that I've already set up for the main databases. And again, this is all about just giving everyone a nice familiarity, so when they're moving across different areas of the workspace, they still sort of understand how things are set up and what the filters are. But now we have this client project database set up, and it has been set to default. And so now what's really nice about this is if we capture a new client project in here, let's say it's for Acme Co, and maybe this is a web design project they're working on them for, and it's for 2024. We can add this in here. We can add our lead. Let's say it's myself. We can add in the date that this might be a project span, or it might be the date that we want it to be completed by. And now we can open this up and you'll see where the power of Notion starts to work. So first of all, we can add some more details about the project itself. Now we can capture some tasks. So here is an example task inside here. We can capture some meetings. So this might be, for example, a kickoff meeting with our client, and we've captured the notes about that meeting. And then maybe we have a doc. Maybe this is a client presentation, or it might even be like so, client presentation. And we're capturing this all inside of Notion. And now if we go to our wider views, we can see we have the example task inside this all task view, and it's related to our Acme Co project. In our docs, we can see we've got the client presentation related to Acme Co. And on our meetings, we can see we have that kickoff meeting related to Acme Co. And so inside these client project pages, you're able to visually show all of this information that is managing this project. And then also you can see them from a high level using these particular databases. So now we've finished our build, there's a few steps we want to take to actually introduce this to the team. The first thing is, if we've been building this sort of in isolation, we'll want to have some stakeholders come in here and sort of use this system, maybe put some example data in here, but basically make sure it works for your workflows and that everyone's happy with it. So the first thing is to get sign off from someone else. And then the next thing is to basically drag and drop these pages inside of your general team space, which will be your default team space that everyone has access to if they're a workspace member. And so the simple way to do this is just literally drag and drop these across. Are you sure you want to move client projects closer together? You can move these together, it looks like. Here we go. Then we're going to drag docs and we're going to drag meetings. So now everyone has access to this. The next thing I would do is you're going to update the access levels. And this is what I was talking to you earlier about. So we're going to use the can edit content access level to basically mean that no one can change the actual database properties or the database templates or delete the databases themselves. They're only going to have the access to interact with the databases. So if we come to this client projects database to start, I'm going to come to share, and then you'll see by default everyone at general has full access and everyone at my workspace has full access. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove everyone so they have, or not remove, I'm going to give everyone can edit content access instead. So I'm going to do can edit content for the team space owners, can edit content for the team space members, and can edit content for everyone. And so only me at the moment has full access. And so this will mean anyone else in the team, if they're using this database, wherever they are, they can come in here, but they can't actually delete these properties. They can't change what the statuses are. They can't add new properties. And then also they can't come to the side here and actually delete the database itself. And basically what this does is it ensures the sort of robustness of the system that you're setting up, and it means that inefficiencies aren't cropping up over time. Working closely with clients and agencies in particular, what I found is when we launch these new systems, if we don't have this access level, over time, people will begin to just bring in properties a bit willy-nilly. So they may find that they need this tag for this very specific context for this one-off project that's never going to be used again. And then it's never tracked what the property was for. And so in 3 months' time, everyone's still looking at this property, not really knowing what it's for, and it clogs up the system. And then you end up with 30, 40 properties that no one knows how to use. So restricting this access is a really important step to maintain the efficiency of your system. So we're going to do that for each of these databases. So I'm going to do it for tasks, docs, and meetings. The other thing is that by default, when you do this, it's only going to be you, whoever's doing it, that's going to be granted full access. So you might also want to add any other additional members who should have full access. So maybe your founders, your CEOs, or you might consider establishing what I like to call the Notion admin team. And so essentially this is the people that you've given the responsibility that you have full access to Notion. It's your responsibility to maintain Notion, to provide access to other people, and you should probably be the members of the team that know the most about Notion and how to use it. So if you establish your Notion admin team, the other thing you might consider doing is coming to your settings and members, creating a group, and calling them Notion admin or Notion champions, whatever it may be. And so this means that whenever you're providing out access like this, you can just come and add your particular Notion admin team, like a group here, and give them the required access to speed this process up. And then my final tip for launching this to the wider team is to set up a meeting to do some live training with everyone to introduce them to this new system. This is really important for getting buy-in from the team and sort of managing that change management process. Time and time again, I find that clients will just start making things in Notion, not really tell the team what they're for, and then no one ends up using the actual system itself. So to get buy-in from your team, think about how you're going to train them up on it, get them excited about using Notion, and that's going to put you on a path for success when building inside of Notion. So if you've been following along, you should now have a nice agency system or the foundations of one set up inside of your Notion. If you haven't been following along and you've been sort of just watching, eating some popcorn, again, I want to remind you that there's a link down below for my Notion for Agencies template. So it's a ready for you, done for you template that you can download and start using right out of the box. If you want to see a full tour of the Notion for Agencies template, you can check out this video here or here, wherever I put the box. And if you found this video useful, please do consider subscribing and leaving a like and a comment. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.